Ree was 42 decades into the tough, greasy work that left oil beneath his fingernails, when life surprised him again, so suddenly it felt like he was knocked off his feet. He met Karen at one of those rooftop cocktail parties his friend Greg liked to host whenever he closed a big deal. There were string lights, a view of the skyline, overpriced snacks, and a DJ who seemed to think loud music made up for personality. Greg showed up late, his Armani jacket swinging open, surrounded by 3 women who looked like they stepped off a magazine cover. And in the center was Karen, a bright red dress, hair shining like 1,000 lights, and a smile warm enough to soften stone. Ree, dressed in blue jeans and steel-toe boots, still faintly smelling of engine oil, felt the world shift beneath him. He tried to act calm, but anyone watching could tell he was already smitten before he even said hello. They spent the evening laughing over shared sliders, telling childhood stories about their dogs, and debating which Bruce Springsteen album was the best. By midnight, Karen had Ree's hoodie over her shoulders, and Ree had forgotten the city was even full of other people. 18 months later they said "I do" on a sunlit beach in Maui. Karen had the drone capturing every moment, a 12-piece mariachi band playing in the background, and a 5-tier cake flown in from Las Vegas. Ree got to watch her dance barefoot in the sand, and for him that made every credit card swipe completely worth it. Back home, life settled into a rhythm. Ree's first marriage had been a painful lesson in heartbreak. Susan had a kind heart, but struggled with alcohol. The cycle of rehab visits kept repeating. The final straw came when their son Owen found her passed out with the stove still on. Ree packed a duffel bag and left. Owen went with him, and ever since, the two had always looked out for one another. By the time Karen entered their lives, Owen was 22, with a new diploma, an internship at a tech startup, and proudly called himself mom adjacent, to spare Ree from having to explain too much. Karen called Owen Oman, and bought him sneakers the color of orange soda. She could be that thoughtful when she wanted to be. Ray's auto shop had grown from a small concrete garage with a leaky roof into a well-known local business. He even had a catchy jingle on the radio, "Ray's Reliable," and it stuck with people. The original shop practically ran itself now, with 3 experienced mechanics and a front desk manager who treated Ray like royalty every time he stopped by. Expansion ideas buzzed in his mind. Maybe a second location across town, maybe a car detailing service, or even fleet contracts. The money wasn't Silicon Valley level, but it came in steadily. And for a hardworking guy from Akron, Ray knew how lucky that was. Karen enjoyed the benefits. Spa weekends, sushi at 11 p.m., shoes that cost more than Ray's first pickup truck. But she disliked chores. Their stainless steel fridge mostly held old takeout containers, like a display in a leftovers museum. Ray didn't mind. He preferred working on a carburetor over chopping onions anyway. He figured no one gets a perfect partner, and Karen's laugh still lit up a room better than any chandelier. By the time their 3rd anniversary rolled around, things felt calm and comfortable. Ray's friends had started having grandchildren, and the desire for another child tugged at him. He dreamed of a second chance at fatherhood, this time without the shadows of Susan's addiction. One late night, he imagined tiny sneakers at the front door and Karen humming lullabies in her smoky, low voice. He mentioned the idea one morning over coffee. Karen smiled, but her expression was tight. "Ray, sweetheart," she said, "do you even know what pregnancy does to a woman's body? And who's going to run off to Turks and Caicos with me if I'm stuck at home nursing?" She kissed his cheek and called him adorable. Ray didn't push the subject, but the wish stayed with him. Then came the Miami trip request. "Just me and the girls, 5 days, direct flight, hotel right on South Beach," she chirped, scrolling through resorts on her iPad. Ray felt uneasy. He suggested they go together. Karen rolled her eyes so hard Ray swore he heard them click. The argument burst like a summer storm. She accused him of acting like her parole officer. Ray, calm as a monk on cold medicine, said he didn't feel like babysitting drunk strangers. Karen stormed off, slamming the bedroom door so hard the walls shook. In retaliation, she tripled her girls' nights out, neon-lit clubs, 3 a.m. social media stories, stumbling into Ray's truck smelling of vodka and glitter. She knew. Course she knew. Ray's first marriage had fallen apart because of alcohol. And now, again, he was carrying an unconscious woman up the stairs. Every time. He tucked her into bed, whispered, "Love you, kiddo," and watched her sleep. Then he lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, counting the bad signs. One Wednesday, after Karen ignored 5 of his calls, Ray let the phone ring itself out. The next morning, he told her he'd left his tablet at the shop. She just hummed, too hungover to care. Ray also called Owen, hoping he might swing by and pick it up. But Owen was out charming a date over chicken wings. "You do you, Pops," he laughed. Ray hung up and drove to the garage. The shop sat in a maze of concrete storage units. A cheap lease but lousy acoustics. As he unlocked the door, he heard a faint thump like furniture being moved. Could have been the wind rattling the shutters, he thought. Inside smelled like rubber and engine coolant, same as always. Through the window blinds, he noticed Greg's cherry red '66 Mustang parked in the customer spot. Strange, but not impossible. Greg rotated cars the way some people changed socks. Ray called him. Straight to voicemail. He shrugged. Then came the thump again, this time with a soft gasp behind it. Ray's skin tingled. He walked quickly down the hall to his office, turned the knob, and stepped into darkness. There was a silhouette on the desk, and another figure leaning over it. Ray flipped the lights on. The scene lit up in full color. Karen lay flat on her back, her dress wrinkled and pushed up, legs wrapped around Greg's waist. Greg's slacks were around his ankles, and his face looked like someone caught in the middle of the worst surprise selfie ever taken. For one cartoonish second, no one moved. Then Ray's heart pounded like a jackhammer against his ribs, and he charged forward. Greg took the first punch like a crash test dummy, slamming into the filing cabinets. Ray might have been shorter and older, but adrenaline is a powerful strength booster. He grabbed Greg by his expensive shirt, his knuckles turning white from the grip. Karen screamed, slipped off the desk, and scrambled into the corner, hugging her purse like a child clutching a teddy bear. "You run out of women, Greg," Ray snapped. Each word burned in his throat like battery acid. Greg gasped for breath. "You think she wasn't mine," he shot back. The arrogance in his voice flickered, because that was all he had left. Then he spilled everything. Late-night club meetups, secret messages, quick motel visits. A whole affair that had played just outside the edges of Ray's vision. From the corner, Karen's voice cracked like broken glass. "This is your fault. If you'd let me take that stupid trip, I wouldn't have needed." Her sentence dissolved into sobs, anger, and smudged mascara. Ray's fury did something unexpected. Cooled. His hands were still clenched around Greg's collar, but then he simply let go. Greg stumbled, quickly pulled up his pants, and ran down the hallway, leaving his dignity behind like a spilled drink. Ray turned to Karen. The glamorous, bold woman from before was gone. What remained was a shaking figure with streaked makeup, and a dress that suddenly looked cheap and sad. "Keys. Purse. Door," Ray said, his voice cold and empty like deep space. "Don't come home. I'll send your things to your mom's." That was the final blow. The prenup papers were airtight, written by a sharp lawyer who had once overcharged Ray on a transmission repair, and later felt guilty enough to pay him back with legal expertise. Karen would leave with exactly what she came with. One suitcase. No claim on the shops, the house, or the retirement savings. The next morning, Ray dropped her bags at her parents' split-level home and explained everything. Karen's mother, a Sunday school singer, clutched her chest in shock. Her father stormed outside and kicked the garden gnome across the driveway. Karen stood behind the screen door, crying, trying to reach for Ray's hand. He just gave her a single nod, as polite and distant as a stranger waiting at a bus stop, then walked away. Weeks passed. The divorce papers were finalized. Greg tried calling, texting, even sending bottle service apologies. Ray blocked every number. Instead, he focused on building his second garage. He poured his time into mentoring Owen, teaching him how to read financial reports, letting him test out the new lift system, and sharing midnight burgers while laughing about how life will knock you flat if you're not ready. Karen moved in with Greg at first. She convinced herself he'd surely propose. But Greg, proud bachelor for life, backed off quicker than a scared horse. He liked variety, not promises. He suggested something casual, an allowance deal. She could be Tuesday and sometimes Saturday. If she didn't expect commitment. Rent. Maybe. Dental plan. Definitely not. Karen agreed because the other option meant looking for a job, and her resume was thinner than a drink napkin. The real problem. Greg treated women like TV subscriptions. Cancel anytime. He'd show her off at charity events, yes. But no surprise shopping sprees. No real care. Karen floated through a life of luxury without ownership. Each gift reminded her. She had traded a husband who adored her for a man who barely remembered how she liked her coffee. At night, she lay on Greg's penthouse couch, scrolling through old photos of Ray, teaching her how to bait a hook, cheering when she made her first three-pointer at the arcade, softly singing her a silly goodnight song only she ever heard. Regret felt like salt water rising in her throat. Meanwhile, Ray discovered that mornings could feel light again. He started cardio sessions at sunrise, something Karen used to tease him about. He enrolled in a welding sculpture class, sparks flying like fireworks in the dark. He even reactivated an old dating profile, not because he needed someone, but because the silence no longer scared him. The first message came from a nurse who rebuilt vintage motorcycles on weekends. Ray smiled. Maybe the universe still had a few jokes to tell. Occasionally, Ray found himself humming the lullaby he had once hoped Karen would sing to their future child. It still hurt, yes, but the pain no longer emptied him. He kept the melody, as it reminded him that there was still space for hope. One rainy Saturday, months after everything had fallen apart, Owen showed up with a Polaroid camera. He insisted on taking a selfie in front of the nearly finished second shop. They posed, with raindrops sparkling on the neon sign in the background. Father and son grinned like they had just won the Super Bowl. Ray taped the photo inside his toolbox. The sounds of metal clanking, engines revving, and employees calling for wrenches filled the air. Every time Ray opened that drawer, he saw proof that rebuilding wasn't just for carburetors. It was for hearts, too. Karen's name no longer echoed in his thoughts. Greg's Mustang drove off into someone else's mess. Ray had learned that sometimes saying no to a storm is the only way to save the entire sailboat. And if a stranger at a bar ever asks why he walks a little lighter these days, he'll tip his hat, take a sip of his coffee and say, "Long story, partner. But it ends with the sun coming up."